I'm Anil Kumar. Let me thank all the viewers and subscribers for watching my videos. This video is especially for my friend, Mr. Sunil Khandelwal. Mr. Sunil, thanks a lot for watching my videos and sharing them with your friends. You have been making excellent suggestions over the past so many days, and now here is a video for you. You wanted to see how this mathematics could help us in our daily life. So I've taken 4 examples here which are so close and dear to all of us Canadians. When we go through these examples, you will realize that yes, this is what we were looking for. The very first question here is, the price of my favorite morning coffee increased from $2.50 to $3. Find the reduction in the consumption so that there is no change in the expenditure. With our limited earnings, we cannot bear with these increase in prices. Somehow, we have to budget ourselves. So mathematics can help us understanding where to control and how much. So the first question will take care of our morning coffee expenses. Question number 2. The price of gas is increased by 12%. Find the reduction in the consumption so that there is no change in the expenditure. Gas. We drive a lot. I remember when I bought a new car, I drove to Winnipeg and I had to get it serviced there, since that made it 5,000 kilometers. So indeed, average Canadians, we are driving 100 kilometers per day. So an increase of 12% will definitely hit us hard. So we need to deal with this situation. Well, question number 3 here is on the utility services. It says the utility service rates has decreased by 20% and its consumption is increased by 20%. What is the increase or decrease in expenditure of utility services? Well, this is the election time, Always we hear that utility services rates have come down, but our bills are increasing. We have more to pay, mainly because we are spending much more than required. So this highlights on that aspect of our life. Question number 4 is towards the earning of our own country. It deals with the revenue. Question number 4a is the duty on foreign imports is reduced by 40%. By how much percent must the consumption increase to maintain the revenue at the same level, right? And part B is reduction in the imports is provided mainly to boost the economy, right? Therefore, the real question is part B, which is the duty on foreign imports is reduced by 40%. By how much percent must the consumption increase to boost the revenue by 20%, right? So I hope you find these 4 questions extremely useful. And this will also help us to understand a very important concept, and that is how to deal with reduction or increase in the prices and how to control our expenditure. Perfect. So let's begin with their solution. I'll keep in mind that the solution should be simple so that all of us can understand. Now believe me, these questions are actually very difficult questions to answer in any test paper. But I'm keeping in mind that we all have kind of average knowledge of mathematics, but we are interested in solving excellent questions. So let us see how easily we can actually solve them. Okay, so let's begin with the very first one, which is the price of my favorite morning coffee increased from $2.50 to $300. $3. Find the reduction in the consumption so that there is no change in the expenditure. Now, one key is that to make calculations simple, let us say that our consumption is 100 cups. right? So if our consumption is 100 cups, and if the rate is $2.50, in that case, how much are we spending? In that case, we are spending $250. Clear? That is what we are spending. But now all of a sudden, what happens? Well, there is a hike. And instead of $2.50, we are now paying $3 for each cup of coffee. So these 100 cups are going to cost us not $250 but $300. That is what we say. Find the reduction in the consumption so that there is no change in expenditure. But what we want is, we don't want to spend $300, right? We want to spend only $250. That means somehow we have to cut down $50. Does it make sense? We have to cut down $50. Now, cutting down $50 is now based on this price of $3 each, right? So we can look at it in two different ways, right? Either we can see how many cups of coffee are we cutting down so that we save this $50. Well, each is $3, right? So as far as cups are concerned, we need to reduce by, well, $50 in all, and each cup is costing $3 per cup, correct? So when you divide, what do you get? Well, 3 times 1 is 3, 20. 3 times 6 is again 20. We're left with 2. So more than 16 cups, right? So exactly 16 2 over 3, which we say approximately 17 cups. Right? Now this 17 cups is from every 100 cup you consume. So we're talking about a person, isn't it? Right? So 17 out of, we can say exactly, mathematically, 16 2 over 3 out of 100, right? So that means percent. Perfect. So that gives us an idea. So it is a reduction of 16 2 over 3. This negative sign which you see means reduction, right? So this is for reduction. Do you get the idea? So reduction by 16 2 over 3%, since it is on every 100 consumed. Does it make sense to you? Correct? So that is how easily we can actually understand and solve such a question. And it really doesn't take a minute, right? So simple. With $3, $300, but we want to spend $250, less $50, correct? Since the price is $3 each, dividing 50 by 3, we get almost 17 cups to reduce out of 100. So 17% less. Perfect. Let's take the next example. Question number 2, which is, the price of gas is increased by 12%. Find the reduction in the consumption so that there is no change in the expenditure. So just as you saw earlier, it's always good to begin with 100 because 100 gives you straight percent, right? So if I begin with 100, whatever number I get is in percent. So now what has happened is that the price has increased by 12%. 12% more on 100 really means that instead of 100, I'm going to spend 112, right? I'm going to spend 112, right? So all this is in dollars. Perfect. So if I start with $100, I'm spending $112 since the price has jumped from whatever it was by 12% more. So 12% more. Now the idea here is that we really do not want to spend that much. We want to only spend a budgeted amount of $100. How can we do that? There is only one way to do it, and that is to reduce by $12, right? This is the only way you could do it, right? So therefore, clearly, we have a percent reduction here. So we say again, percent reduction is what? Now this negative sign indicates that reduction, right? $12 on every 112 times 100. That gives you percent. Correct? So you can simplify this. So even if you try to do it without calculator, it is not that difficult, right? So, but calculator is better. So if I divide by 4 times 3, 4 times 2 is 8 and 28. So 3 over 28 times 100, or it is equals to 300 by 28. So that is equal to 28 will go one time, so we get 28 and then 120, right? So one time is 28, we are left with 20, so not full, but again we can just go 10, right? So somewhere 10 point something, right? So you could do long division to do this. Let's say like this, right? So it's easier to do like this. So 1 time is 28, we get 20, then 0 times, right? So 0, we have to borrow 1 more, and that means almost 8 times, right? So 8, 8, 64, 8 to 16, and 16 and 6, let's say 7 times, right? 7 and 8 is 56, 6 and 5, 7 and 2, 14 and 5, 19, right? So 10.7%, right? So that is what we get by dividing, or else use calculator, right? So approximately 11% reduction in our travel so that we consume less gas is important to save that 12 out of every 112. Perfect. That is how we are going to do it, right? Now here is solution to question number 3, which is about the utility services. The utility service rate has decreased by 20% and its consumption is increased by 20%. What is the increase or decrease in expenditure of utility services? So again, we can start with 100. Now, we are saying that the rate is decreased by 20%, right? So 20% decrease rate. So a dollar value also decreases by 20%, right? So if I do 20 less than 100, it becomes 80. Perfect. Now what we are saying is that, think all this is, we are talking about every $100. So in every $100, decrease of 20 means $1.80, right? On every 100, 80%, right? Now it says, and its consumption is increased by 20. So we consume more. We think it is cheap, so we can consume more. So we consume 20% more than what we were doing earlier. But now we are paying at the rate of 80 reduced rate, right? So instead of 100 was 80 base, correct? So when we say 20% more, that means 120%, right? So it is 120 out of every 100. This is 20% more than what it was. But the base is 80, correct? So that is what we are paying. So let's try to figure out how much it is. Cancelling these zeros, multiplying 12 by 8, so it becomes 96. Well, 96 is still lesser than 100. So what we do here is, as you can see, we have saved 4%. Do you see that? So what is the increase or decrease in the expenditure of the utility services? So we say it is decrease in expenditure, and it is decreased by 4%. Do you see that clearly? From 100, it is 96. So a decrease in rate, if we were consuming the same, was directly 20%. However, since the consumption increased, we are paying slightly more, right? So 20% more on 80, it becomes 96. How we get our decrease of the utility bills? So if your utility bills are going higher, it simply means that you're consuming much more than what was the subsidy given or what was the decrease in the services. I hope that makes sense. Now let's take up the last example. So here is the last question of our set of 4. Question number 4 is, the duty on foreign imports is reduced by 40%. By how much percent must the consumption increase to maintain the revenue at the same level? And part B is, the duty on foreign imports is reduced by 40%. By how much percent must the consumption increase to boost the revenue by 20%, right? So these are two scenarios on the base, that is the import duties reduction by 40%, right? The whole idea of reducing duties is to increase business. Let us see how it really affects. So to begin with, let's say earlier we had $100 as revenue. Now when we say that it is reduced by 40%, right? So instead of 100, what are we going to get? 40% less. And that is, we are going to get 60. Is that clear? So that becomes the revenue. But what do we want? We want to maintain the revenue at the same level. That means we want this to be 100. Now to do so, what we have to do is increase the consumption, right? Increase by how much? It is increased by 40. But this 40 is on 60. This 40 is on 60. Do you see that? And therefore, the percentage increase will be what? Let's write down. So the percentage increase will be 40 on 60 times 100. Does it make sense to you? Right? So we could simplify this, and that goes 2 and 3, right? So we have 200 divided by 3, or which is 3 times 6 is 18, 20 is again 6, left with 2. So 66, 2 over 3%. Does make sense. Straight away percent, since we started with 100. Do you see that? So starting with 100 is a great advantage. So that is how we will do part 4A. So simple. So I hope by now the concept is absolutely clear. Now there is a twist to this question. The whole idea of business is to boost the revenue, right? So the question now says that the duty on foreign imports is reduced by 40%. By how much percent must the consumption increase to boost revenue by 20%? So now the scenario is slightly different. We still have this reduction in the duty by 40%, which is going to bring down the amount from 100, that unit of 100, to 60. But what we want now is to boost it by 20. That means we want to make it 120. Well, if you want to do that, in that case, you have to increase the consumption by 120 minus 60, which is by 60. Now, that means what? That means the percent increase should be how much? The percent increase should be 60 over 60, right? Times 100, which is 100%. So this can happen if the consumption is increased by 100%. Does make sense to you? So I hope you find this series interesting and useful. I look forward to your comments and suggestions in this regard. So we actually solved these 4 questions, and I hope the method adopted here is simple enough to understand and follow. Feel free to write a comment, share your views, and if you like and subscribe to my videos, that'd be great. Thank you, Mr. Sunil, once again for the request, and I hope it works. All the best.